I'm Mindy Myers. I'm a sexual assault therapist with Riverview Center. I work out of our Decorah office.
Hi, I'm Ebony Hicks. I'm a sexual assault therapist for Riverview Center in Dubuque, Iowa.
So one of the things that Riverview Center provides is ongoing therapy services in addition to advocacy services. And the difference would be the advocacy services can be a little bit shorter term and would provide like the personal, legal, medical advocacy. However, the therapy services can be much longer term. So those are the things that offer a client that ongoing healing.
Riverview Center Counseling and Therapy Services, they're free and confidential. There's no questions about insurance or anything like that. So survivors, they may come to us for a sexual assault, but a lot of times there's multiple traumatic events that happen within their lives. So I love that we're able to talk about those things as well, whether it's domestic violence or trauma within their childhood. We can kind of unpack those different events and not just focus on the sexual assault, but the whole person within our services.
The therapy services beyond the advocacy mean that we can offer a space for healing that's longer term than can happen in advocacy. One of the ways that I try to explain that when I'm first meeting with a client is that trauma happens in isolation and healing happens in connection. As a therapist, we can be that connection that works with survivors to find that healing. We can be a guide toward healing, and it happens at their own pace. So advocacy may be a certain number of sessions or a very specific driven, until the court is finished or until the medical needs are taken care of. Therapy isn't driven in that sort of way. It's driven to what does the client need ongoing until the client and the therapist together feel like we've gotten to a point in the healing where the client is able to move forward.
We don't just work with survivors, we also work with the secondary survivors is what we call them, so the family as well. So if there's a survivor who comes in and their mom needs support or their dad, whoever is their support, they need support, we also give them services.
The trauma carried through sexual assault is not trauma that you can see. So it's not something like you can see someone who's suffering with diabetes or, obesity or some of the more obvious types of injuries, maybe a physical injury or impairment that they have. So a victim of sexual trauma might carry this for many, many years. And so coming into therapy even years later, and finding out that there's a way that they can heal from that, maybe not forget the trauma, but be able to heal from the trauma and have it be a part of their story, but not something that hurts anymore, can be something that they didn't believe was a possibility. I've had clients thank me in tears for something that they never thought that they would get past. The nightmares, the flashbacks, all of the things that no one can see, the panic attacks, the avoidance of people, places, things, just to not have to feel that way that other people who haven't experienced sexual trauma don't have to go through their day thinking about.
I'm working with someone with just having a healthy relationship. So a lot of times within, those unhealthy relationships, we kind of get programmed to respond a certain way. And so now that she's in that healthy relationship, a lot of things are anxiety feeling of if the other person is mad. She has anxiety about if it will come down on her regardless of what the situation may be. So just really focusing on that healthy relationship and how to kind of retrain our brain on those things.
I had a client who has allowed me to talk about her story, who was visibly shaking the first time that we met and talking about her story in a little bit of just briefly in the intake, and she held my hand and I looked at her very genuinely and I said, "Do you trust me?" And she said yes, and I said, "I think that we can do this." And she said, "Okay." That moment of knowing that I have been entrusted with something very, very vulnerable, when people are showing the most vulnerable part of them and entrusting me with that's a great honor and something that I don't take lightly, because that is very, very difficult for someone to do. There are no stronger people than I have ever met than my clients that come forward with that vulnerability and say, can you help me? I think that if my clients and I can get there together, then we've gone from victim to survivor pretty well. So I think those are the reasons that we do therapy for clients who've experienced trauma, sexual trauma, and I think that's why we need to have that service available to all victims of sexual assault. And I think that's why it's pretty amazing that Riverview Center does that.